All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Capitol Hill Ocean Week and our panel on using ocean information for ocean sustainability. I'm your moderator today. My name is Nicole LeBoeuf. I'm the Assistant Administrator of NOAA's National Ocean Service. As we look to build a sustainable future for our ocean, it's more important than ever to understand the complexities of marine ecosystems and how human activities are affecting them. Advances in data technology have enormous promise for increasing our understanding of the ocean environment and for furthering the conservation, management, and balanced use of America's ocean. Translating ocean information and observations into insight that can guide decision making is fundamental to managing our oceans sustainably. We can learn so much from what the ocean has to tell us. Fueled by what is nothing less than a revolution in ocean science and technology, we are in an era of unprecedented expansion in our ability to observe, measure, and understand our ocean and our coasts. For example, we are increasingly aware of the ocean's role in expressing the harmful impacts of climate change, from sea level rise to ocean acidification. The ocean also plays a role in mitigating climate change impacts, having absorbed as much as 90% of our planet's warming in recent decades. The ocean is a powerful source of data required for climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilience strategies. I have no doubt that our reliance upon an application of ocean data for our climate preparations will only continue to grow, that ocean data will be a key commodity in the 21st century. Indeed, we are at a crucial moment where we can shape how ocean data is collected, interpreted, and who benefits from it in the decades ahead. Guaranteeing that all aspects of the ocean data value chain are equitable and grounded in marine stewardship begins with conversations like the one today. At NOAA, we are dedicated to providing the observing capacity needed to detect and respond to climate change in our ocean and along our coasts. NOAA's network of coastal and ocean observing platforms provide regionally tailored data and observations that are integrated into national systems. Together with many partners, NOAA's National Ocean Service is constantly striving to improve the collection, analysis, and dissemination of ocean and coastal derived data designed to help economies thrive and marine ecosystems flourish. Speaking of partners, we have with us today fantastic panelists that are going to discuss their roles in the ocean data and information space and how their work can be used to sustainably manage and protect our ocean for future generations. I am so very pleased to welcome our panelists. First, Veronica Lance, the NOAA NESDIS Coast Watch Program Manager. Emily Shumshinia, Ocean Data Scientist at the Northeast Regional Ocean Council, or NROC. James Morris, a marine ecologist with the National Ocean Service's National Centers for Coastal Ocean Science. And Jake Kreitzer, Executive Director of the Northeast Regional Association of Coastal Ocean Observing Systems, or NERICOOS. You can find out more about our panelists on the CHOW agenda. We're going to begin with each of our panelists giving a short introduction to their work, and then we're going to launch into a discussion about the importance of using ocean information to best support our ocean sustainability for the next 50 years and beyond. First up, Veronica Lance, please tell us a little bit about your work.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you. And thanks for having me on this panel, and nice to talk with everyone this afternoon. NOAA Coast Watch for 35 years has been helping people access and use satellite data in their missions and applications related to oceans and coastal projects. And we do this through products, making products. We do this through tools to help get the products into applications downstream, and through services, that is by serving data, making it easy to find, and also through education, training programs, and collaborations with others.
Thanks, Veronica. Emily, please tell us about what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Shamshiniat. I manage the Northeast Ocean Data Portal on behalf of the Northeast Regional Ocean Council, or NROC, which is one of several regional ocean partnerships in the United States and was established by the governors of the New England states in 2005. I'm also the director of the Regional Wildlife Science Collaborative for offshore wind. If you were just in the offshore energy panel a few minutes ago, you heard much more about that. So I'm going to focus just for a few minutes more on data portals, but I'm happy to answer questions about RWSE as well. That certainly is pertinent to the sustainability of our ocean ecosystems and data sharing. But anyway, the Northeast Ocean Data Portal itself was, like I said, established in the early 2000s. It's supported by several federal agencies and by other funders, but I just wanted to give a plug for the NOAA Office for Coastal Management, who've supported the portal for over a decade and continue to. And especially the Regional Ocean Data Sharing Initiative within NOAA OCM that provides funding for new data development and coordination with other regions, which is super valuable. So the data portal is a free public platform that contains thousands of data products depicting ocean resources and activities in the Northeast region, derived from federal, state, tribal, academic, industry, and stakeholder data sources. All of our data products are developed and vetted by experts and stakeholder work groups. In addition, to maps and data, we also provide information about current agency actions or other opportunities for the public to comment on projects or processes occurring offshore, including, for example, offshore wind. So the Northeast Ocean Data Portal is essentially a bridge between raw data and observations and the uses and applications of those data, whether they be by the public for providing comments on agency actions or by the agencies themselves in management and regulatory decision making. So this is a really interesting place to sit in the data ecosystem, and it means that a big part of my job is finding out what information people need to make better decisions about the ocean and then matching that with the available science and observations and ensuring that we have data and map products and explanations and all the right user support and tools available to address those needs. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. That's awesome. All right, next up, James Morris, tell us a little bit about what you do at NCOS.
Sure, thanks, Nicole. So I work in the National Centers for Coastal Ocean Science, which is part of the National Ocean Service. And we're working on building marine spatial planning capabilities. All that data that that Emily just talked about is very, very important. And we also work to develop data. We work to support not just the data portals, but also to provide support for marine cadastre, which is a large geodatabase of data that is housed with our Office for Coastal Management, also in the Ocean Service. But you know that one of the things that NOAA's been collecting data for over 200 years. And what we are really working to do is to bring all that data together in spatial models. We can use spatial models that can look across literally a sea of data that can use to weight and to score various data layers to better understand in new ways the ocean. And so we're working to support the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, with development of wind energy areas, transmission line scenario planning. We're working to develop spatial models for food production systems like aquaculture. We're supporting state agencies around the nation as well in terms of helping with spatial planning needs in state waters. So there's many different applications. We work in that sort of big ecosystem, spatial planning. Where's the best places for pioneering ocean industries to develop? How can we use spatial modeling to develop new intelligence and insightful intelligence about how the ocean works and breathes, and how does all these different data layers interact with each other? So with that, I look forward to the panel today and talking more about ocean big data.
Thanks, James. Awesome. All right, Jake.
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks for the invitation to be on this panel, and thanks to everyone who joined this discussion today. Is that better? Okay. Let's try that again. I was saying thank you, Nicole, for the invitation to be on this panel, and to everyone who's joined the discussion. As Nicole said earlier, I'm Jake Kreitzer. I'm the Executive Director of NERACOOS, or the Northeastern Regional Association of Coastal Ocean Observing Systems. We are one of 11 regional associations that cover all of U.S. coastal ocean and Great Lakes waters and implements the U.S. Integrated Ocean Observing System, or IOOS. For those not familiar with IOOS, IOOS is a partnership among 17 different federal agencies with a variety of responsibilities related to the ocean. It's administered through a dedicated office within Nicole's National Ocean Service. And IOOS has a pretty broad mandate given the breadth of those agency partners. Generally, we aim to generate and disseminate useful information. That includes both data, model outputs, and data products that help a variety of users work better on and around the ocean. So near Irkutsk, we implement IOOS from Long Island Sound up to the Nova Scotian Shelf, and we do that with a wide variety of partners. We have any number of operating partners in the region that include the large state universities in each of the New England states, and other research and implementation partners. And a big part of what we do as an organization is lead much of the engagement that helps shape our observing system. So that means lots and lots and lots of dialogue with both people in government, people in the private sector, educators, scientists, different community members, anyone who's really interested in and needs information on the ocean. So thanks again for the invitation. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to just jump in with a really broad question. Panelists, answer it all any way you like. What do you see as the most important need in the ocean intelligence space? This could be a partnership need, data need, resource need, whatever you think. When you sit around, oh, if I only had, what would that be? And you guys just jump on in, guys and gals.
I'm actually gonna throw a little bit of a lob to James. I think that one of the biggest needs is synthesis of the many different data streams that we currently collect. We're collecting so much information and increasing that volume every day that a real need is someone to look across all of it. And whether it's building models and spatial frameworks like James' office does, or if it's academics and other researchers that are doing that and using the agency data, I would love to see more synthetic work come from the many streams we collect.
Emily, I'll pay you later for that. I appreciate the observation because I think you're exactly right. And we have, in the US, we have not invested in marine spatial analytics at the level that some of our competitive nations around the world have. We see great advancements happening in terms of energy development and in other types of ocean sectors, largely because they've done more planning. So this is an opportunity for the US now. We are sitting on big data. It's big by anyone's definition. We have a tremendous amount of data resources, many of which you manage and other folks manage with regional data portals and marine cadastre and other such. We have a great opportunity to synthesize that information. We recently released last November 2 regional ocean atlases. We like the idea of ocean atlases that synthesize and tell us about and teach us about ocean neighborhoods, about ocean regions, looking across natural resources, transportation, looking across protected resources, all the things that create the neighborhoods in the ocean, looking across all those things, synthesizing those things. And from that, we can learn more about the ocean and learn more about the opportunities that exist there and the environmental sensitivities that exist there. So thanks for the soft toss. I agree with you. I'll support that 100% because it's right in our wheelhouse. And I think that's an area that we're going to be collaborating on for a long time.
Thanks, James. Emily or Jake, you want to jump in? Yeah, please.
May I just say, in order to do all those things, we need excited people coming up through the education system that are not afraid to deal with big data sets. You can still love the ocean and love the idea of the ocean, but we've gone beyond taking a few cupfuls of ocean, and still has to be done out there, but people who are comfortable with skills that work with big data sets is just, that's what we need, is a pipeline of people who can do that.
So Nicole, I agree with everything my fellow panelists have said. And I think one thing I might add is just the pipeline on the other end. In some instances, I think that we have a dizzying array of data that have been accumulated by a number of means over the years, and our capacity for data collection is growing and growing and growing. I fully agree with Emily and James, though, that synthesis is important to make sense of that all. But sometimes I worry that we have more work to do in application, and that the application of data and the understanding that comes from modeling and other types of synthesis isn't as well developed. And that can be due to just having the right policy frameworks in place that are ready to ingest the outcomes of all that data collection and synthesis, or just having the training and capacity among other users outside of government. And that includes industry members and local communities who sort of really understand how to make sense of that data and make decisions. I mean, you heard in both mine and Emily's kind of opening salvos that decisions are a key endpoint in the work we do. And in some cases, not all, but in some cases, I see a bit of a disconnect between all of the good science we do and the ability to actually put it into practice.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. It seems like your answers are all very interrelated. More effective and visible applications could bring more interest into the field, and more interest into the field, more smart young people coming up into this field are going to have their, the ability to wrap their heads around big data better than we ever have. So what does the future workforce look like in ocean intelligence? How do we get folks interested and realizing how much promise and opportunity there is in the application of ocean data? What gets you excited?
Well, I'll tell you something that gets me excited is the opportunities for stuff like AI. Using artificial intelligence to mine data and to pull out information. I give it. There's always going to be the need for better data, and the ocean is changing so fast that we constantly have to stay up to date, right? So there's always data development needs. So if you're going into that business, you're going to be busy because the ocean is constantly changing. But think about the applications of AI for better understanding whale distribution, better understanding fishing patterns. We know there's data poor, sectors of the ocean, the blue economy, that even the synthesis work, the spatial modeling work highlight. And so as we do more synthesis, as we do more ocean region scale, it's going to highlight for us where are some of those data gaps and how can we use newer and better ocean tech to provide better data to inform better planning and better conservation. And that's an exciting future field there.
It sounds to me like we can't do sustainability in the ocean without data. I was like, it's got to be there, right? Yeah. So James, you talked a little bit about investments earlier. Where would this most strategic investments be in this space? Is it in the networks of sensors? Is it in high performance computing? If each of you had one more nickel to spend, where would your first purchase be? Where would you go?
Well, Nicole, I think my answer to your previous question about what gets me most excited, I mean, one answer, there's many actually answers to that question, but one of them is just the past. The fact that for decades now, in various ways, we've been building up a national observing system, and in many cases that has generated decades-long time series of data, and that's something you can't do overnight, and it's incredibly valuable. Making sense of everything we're now able to better observe and understand can only happen in the context of change, and so the fact that we have this long-standing effort, this long-standing commitment, and as a result, these long-standing time series, is really important. And so often, the first thing I want to do is shore up that foundation, shore up the kind of bedrock systems we have that have provided us this really unique picture of continuity and change in the region.
Veronica, how about from your perspective? I mean, you've got the bird's eye view from satellites, which are expensive. Where would investment go to improve our our bird's eye view of the ocean?
Nicole, I think one thing I'm thinking about is just broadening the educational base so that people have a better sense about what the satellite data can do and can't do. There are limitations. And we are doing that in NOAA Coast Watch on a number of different levels, including developing a college course at University of Maryland, next door to where our headquarters, our main office is. We teach week-long satellite data courses. For example, we had to switch to online with the COVID, and that's been actually quite beneficial because people can join us internationally. And our classes are bigger, and we've restructured them a little bit to give people some time on their own, but they come with a project and they learn the real basics, where there's no embarrassment of asking a question that you don't know something about, because we start at the very beginning, but at the end, you know something about satellite data and how to use it for your application. And so for me, all data everywhere is coming, right? We've got lots of sensors, and you could imagine a world where we've got lots of observations, but we're still going to need people to channel that, and educating people is important, and that spreads the use of the data farther and wider into many, many more applications, things that I might never think of. But if I share that information with other people and they have an idea what they can do with it, then it takes it into just new territory. So the satellite data themselves are long-term now. We're getting to the point where we've got several decades worth of observations in some of the parameters. Others are a little younger. We're improving all the time with spatial resolution, with spectral resolution, so you can get more information about from the satellites what they're seeing. The next real frontier is being able to see a little deeper rather than just surface ocean. And there are some active type instruments that can probe the ocean. Right now, we use surface data, but model it, marry it to modeling so that you get a water column view. So marrying the satellite data with other things to get the full 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional, including time, picture of the ocean.
It's a really good point, because the ocean is not just the surface, it's not just the water column, it's not just the seafloor. How do we use ocean data to really place a value, a financial value, really, on our ocean real estate? What is that? What is the ocean real estate? It's the surface, the water column, the floor, all of it. If I wanted to build something there or use it for some purpose, how would we use ocean data? To any of the panelists, how would we use that to better understand the value of our ocean real estate?
Nicole, we built a tool called Ocean Reports a couple of years ago now, that its purpose was to start helping you answer that question. So you can go anywhere in the entire economic exclusive zone of the US, so almost 4 million square miles, draw a box. And for that box that you drew, you get a automated in 1 second custom analysis, spatial analysis of that ocean space. It tells you all about the natural resources that are there. It tells you about the energy and minerals. It tells you about the wind energy resource potential of that space. It tells you all those things. We basically try to think of what are the baseline knowledge that everybody would need to know about a particular ocean spot that can inform almost any conversation and raise our ocean IQ, really quickly after reviewing that information. And we're very fortunate to have support from, our colleagues at the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, our colleagues in OCM. We brought together a team of scientists to build this application, and it's really the first of its kind globally that could provide that level of analysis. You'll find in the economics chapter, if you scroll down to economics, there's an economics tool that builds on the eNow economic survey for the marine economy. And it's a really cool sort of first step of what is the value of some ocean space. But that value is changing rapidly. We've just seen, for example, the New York Bight lease sales going for almost over $4 billion for energy production. So we are seeing ocean space, the value, how we think about the ocean changing even in the last several months. And it's kind of a really exciting space to think about in terms of what is the future value of ocean space and how do we balance pioneering industry development with natural resources and such. And so for that, that's a real challenge and speaks to some degree about your last question for me. If you were to ask me where to put that next nickel, I would be happy to think a lot about sort of predictions of how the ocean is changing and how can decisions we're making today affect our ocean future tomorrow. And that's got me worried a little bit, right? Because we gotta think about some of these things more programmatically.
Well, you're absolutely right. And on the ocean changing, I'd be interested to hear from Emily a little bit about how NROC is working with different sectors, different ocean users, and using data like James was just describing to bring them together and understand maybe some of the trade-offs or some of the ways that they can both benefit from being in an ocean space at the same place at the same time.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. I was thinking while James was talking and about your question about the value of ocean space, and I think it's really a function of the stakeholders of that particular space. And sometimes that's a really local question or a local scenario, and sometimes it's a regional scenario. So I think this is a really nice role for the regional ocean data portals to play, and the way that James described Ocean Reports tool. Those are tools and platforms that allow you to kind of understand the intricacies of what's going on at a particular location and the mix of stakeholders that are involved or may be involved in that space. And one of the probably not well-known uses of the data portals is it can be used to identify those stakeholders. It's not just a tool where you can flip through different layers of maps and look at the resources and uses. You can get a good understanding for who might care about a particular space by looking at the whale watching activity layer or by the commercial fishing layer. And so we would really encourage users to think creatively in how they use the data portal to do those sorts of things. But also to go back, I want to bite at your question about where I would put that nickel. I just want to know, I would split it in two. And my first half would go to coders so that tools like Ocean Reports and tools like the data portal can continue to pull in all of these data streams. And we talked about how much data we're collecting. We're collecting a lot, but we're also expecting it to be publicly available too, right? And we want the public to be able to look at it and use it. And that requires a lot of computing power and a lot of skill to make that happen. My other half of my nickel would go to data translators, people who are addressing the issue like Jake brought up, where we have decisions that need to be made. How do we even know how to tackle them? We need people who are well-versed in the science, but also in the data management and the technical side to know who to ask and how to find those data to answer those questions. I think this is all related. Identifying the stakeholders, identifying the appropriate data for the uses, and making sure we have the tools to make that data accessible are all part of this data ecosystem that, you can't have one without the other. I'm splitting my nickel in 4 different ways now, I think. I'm going to stop before I get too carried away.
You need more than a nickel, I think. So that gets me to another thought. So if you can use these data portals to identify potential stakeholders, You're asking for people that can that are data savvy to translate. But what if we want to get people into the data that are not data savvy, that are not super well versed in how to use these portals and such, but we know them to be stakeholders? How do we ensure that our work here and in this space is truly accessible and is equitable? I'd be interested to hear from anyone who's thinking about not just putting it out there, but making it understandable and meaningful across the spectrum of users.
Nicole, so with the satellite data, we've been dealing with that for a long time because it's a little foreign for a lot of people, and we know that people think that all of the data coming at them is coming at them like a harsh garden hose, and we try to change it into this drip irrigation model where we're just dripping the right amount of information and let that little flower blossom instead of just blasting it. And so that's where that's where the people part comes in. I think we've got data, we've got models, we've got tools, we've got lots of processing, all of that, AI, it's all going to happen, but still there needs to be some human interaction, people who understand the problems, talking to people who understand something about the tools, and just collaborating together and figuring out how to get it done. It may not be glamorous or large scale results, but application by application, we are getting things done. And one of your questions was about equity, and the more people that we reach out to that have those skills or that at least know the data exists, the more we can help them use the data.
Nicole, I want to strongly second what
Please.
Veronica just said. I think the key to making sure that the data and the models and the products and the portals that we're producing are as valuable, as widely used as possible, the first thing to do is put them all aside and make sure that we are meeting people where they are, that we're understanding what their interests are, what their challenges are, what their needs are. Then turning back toward all of those resources and seeing, are they going to be helpful or not? And if they are, then it's the legwork. I think this is what Veronica was describing of helping them to understand those tools while you're helping to understand their needs, and in a very interactive way, making sure the products are useful. And where they're not, then going back and doing the work of building the new tools that will meet those needs. So just people to people interaction needs to happen first and foremost, and then in an ongoing way, really with all the data aside for a spell.
So I'm going to ask kind of a silly question here. We've got a couple of regional folks. We've got national effort. We have a look from outer space. Where's the right place to get our data? How do we bridge all of this? Is one better than the other? National versus regional versus? No, right.
We have a phrase called fit for purpose, right? The data that you need needs to serve your purpose. And so there is no, we also in my organization in Coastwatch, we have actually multiple access pathways where so I liken it to maybe a boutique versus maybe big box Costco or a great big grocery store chain or something where we've got regional nodes that serve data of interest that they know for their location, or they're within NOAA. We've got different parts of NOAA, fisheries, NOS, research. So our nodes are located, they coexist with the different parts of NOAA. So they, if it's a fisheries application, these people know fisheries and they also know satellite data. So choosing data is an art in and of itself. I think, as I said before, at some point, data will be everywhere, like all the time on the cloud. The thing is, at that point, we in NOAA want to be sure that the data are we have trusted data, well-validated data, and that they are, I'm sorry, I'm not thinking of the word, but you know, there's something tied to the data that, I'm sorry, the word's just going right out of my head, but the pedigree of the data, you know, where it's been, who's handled it, there's a word for that, so that people know where it's been and who's touched it, and there's that chain, that maybe blockchain kind of idea where you're keeping track of it, because once data get out there, anybody can, you know, there could be anything, any file being used for anything. How do you know that you've got the right data? So that's a big concern that we're worried about right now. Not that people can't access data, but how do they know what they've got once they've got a hold of it?
Nicole, when we were,
please.
yeah, when we were getting ready to build the regional atlases for aquaculture opportunity areas for Gulf of Mexico and Southern California, we had no clue how many data layers it would take to get a picture of the region. You know, how many natural resource data layers, how many shipping traffic data layers, how many protected resources data layers, how many habitat layers, how many, all these different industries that are working there. Interestingly, so we talked to hundreds and hundreds of stakeholders. We mined for data. We mined all the publicly available data. And then we started on the non-publicly available data, you know, sensitive data, data that's important for national security, where military areas are, all that kind of stuff. And interestingly, we came up, both regions came out around 250 data layers. Now there are sublayers beyond that, can reach into the thousands. For example, like water temperature at different depths. That's, you know, that data can go into many different layers. But we had about 250 data types that went into those regional ocean models. It was interesting that both regions came out about the same, giving us sort of the first look that at a regional ocean scale, if you're going to do broad marine spatial planning, you got to be in the hundreds of data layers before you're going to adequately understand the ocean. So that was a really exciting sort of finding for us, is that it gives us get in the ballpark, right, in terms of the amount of data layers. But ultimately, to answer your question, it kind of depends on your question. What question are you asking of the data, and that will determine, you know, basically how much data you have access to, how much data you need to mine, and those kinds of things. For us, the question was very general. You know, where can we find areas of opportunity for the specific industry? So it's a very fascinating sort of data ballpark kind of question, and really depends on the question you're asking of data.
Well, and that gets to Veronica's point about being fit for purpose, right?
Right.
It really does. So we just have a few minutes left. I'm going to ask a little bit of a different question, and I'd like everyone to not just respond. Please do respond, but also please give a little bit insight as to what really gets you hopeful about this space. The question is a little different than we've already covered, like some resource limitations, workforce limitations, and that kind of thing. But more than that, do you see barriers to our progress in this field? And if so, what can we do to break those barriers down? And then again, tell me a little bit about what makes you hopeful for the next phase of this ocean data and information revolution.
I'll take a stab at that, Nicole. I've been thinking since you asked the question a while ago about the value of ocean real estate, kind of how to answer that question, even as the discussion has progressed. And I think the reason I was struggling with that question, and this will get to the barrier, is because ocean ecosystems are, you know, fluid and therefore highly interconnected at a variety of spatial scales. So what happens in a particular piece of real estate, depending upon the ecological and oceanographic characteristics of that space, can affect many other places. And I think that's a barrier. The fact that, you know, in our corner of the world, what goes on in the Gulf of Maine is determined in very strong ways by what's happening right up to the Arctic. You know, a hunk of a glacier calves off the Greenland ice sheet. It enters the Labrador Current and eventually is going to have an effect on the temperature and salinity and nutrient profiles of the Gulf of Maine. And that is going to drive plankton production and fisheries and aquaculture production and harmful algal bloom. So we have very complex systems operating over very large scales, and everything is changing about them. And so it's tough to deal with that. Now, to not end on such a downer, I think everything we've talked about today, all of the microsensor innovations, satellite remote sensing tools, increasingly sophisticated models and synthesis tools, all that is enabling us to understand the ocean in more cost-effective ways at larger scales. I think the awareness of this larger scale connectivity is slowly gaining traction. It's like the scientific community's been there for a while, but policymakers as well. And then we are now a year into the UN Decade of Ocean Science, which is somewhat a nebulous thing, but beginning to take shape and creating the kinds of forums and opportunities to engage and think and work at these sorts of scales. So I think scale is a barrier, but between technology and policy and economics, there's actually a number of doors opening to help us get past that barrier.
Thank you, Jake.
I'll second that and build on it. I think that's a great theme to leave on, is this notion of the need to predict a little bit the future in terms of what is happening with the changing ocean. And in addition to that barrier, the challenge of prediction, which I think, as Jake noted, can be overcome by a number of different advances in tools, technology, and people, building support for the comfort we have with those predictions and relying on them for decision making. And I think this also speaks to a point Jake made, that we need more uptake from decision makers for things like modeled products, which right now, because you have an uncertainty metric with every model, there's a lot of hesitancy to use those in decision making, right? But we don't have a choice right now, I don't think. With the pace of climate change and the pace of just general change in the ocean, I think we need to build that comfort for relying on models, and maybe have many models to inform our decision making so we can understand kind of the window of potential outcomes. And so I think that, again, cross cuts like our communication, our technology, our workforce, like all of that can come into play to help address this.
Thank you, Emily.
I'll just say that I see time as a barrier, and we got to bust that barrier by more aggressive focusing on the ocean economy and the ocean climate change issues, environmental change issues. We're time and resource limited. Time and resource, and time is a resource, and the ocean is almost changing. Our ocean coastal ecosystems are changing faster than the science can keep up in many cases. We see that at a big picture when we look at the big picture through synthesis models and those kinds of things. So, we need to increase the urgency here. We need to increase the impact factors across the board, and But like Jake, I don't want to end on a negative note. I like to think that we can do better. We are seeing rapid advancements in many sectors of ocean and intel and technology, and I'm excited about some of these new and groundbreaking approaches. So I think it's a hopeful future, but one that we're going to have to work a bit harder on, given the rate of change that is underway, both in terms of how we use the ocean and also how the ocean environment is changing.
Thank you, James. All right, Veronica.
Okay, sorry, lost my mute button. I like to think, I don't know how to say this without sort of being self-defeating, but some of us, what we're doing now is the barrier. Like, I know what I know. I have come up through a certain amount of education, discipline, understanding, but things are changing faster than I can relearn. So I need to stand out of the way and make room for new people with new ideas. And it's not that you don't want some continuity in knowledge to pass along, but I just think that there are ways of thinking about the ocean that those of us who are already in the business are you know, we've all got our pipelines, and there's the next generation of people who are going to synthesize across our pipelines, and that's what we have to allow to happen, and push out to those new ideas and new people, whatever we know, and let them run with it. And I'm excited that there are people out there to take up that challenge.
Thank you so much, Veronica and Emily and James and Jake, for your time today, and for everyone that's watching us. I couldn't imagine ending on a more perfect note. Veronica, I completely agree with you. We need to bring in innovation and new thinking and fresh minds to really take what we've already begun to do and take it to a very next level, because the ocean demands it, because everyone that depends on the ocean demands it. And I'm really excited for everyone who's going to come up to me and say, I am ready to go. I'm impatient. I want to solve some problems, and point me in the right direction. And please do. Thank you all for joining us today. Happy Capitol Hill Ocean Week. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.